Welcome to the memorial service for Jane English. We're here to grieve for her loss and to remember her life and why she was so important to all of us. Michael, Alex, Chris, I'm so sorry for your loss. You, along with Bob and Mary and Shirley and John and Tim, have a great family, and there's a big gap to fill. It's time that you guys step up to the plate. Jane's life was short, but it was full, and we're lucky she shared it with us. There are a lot of reminders here of Jane, Alex and Chris and Michael, my website, my memories of high school, and a charming house at Crescent Beach. Today we have several people who would like to speak. And since I have the microphone, I get to go first. My name is Pat Hamilton. I went to high school with Jane. They were our formative years. My brother Bill and I moved to Lake Placid in 1967. There's a picture of us up there at the high school prom. It was a time of cultural and racial upheaval. The high school had only been integrated the year before, and the war in Vietnam was heating up. A small group of us, including Jane and Bob, decided to challenge the status quo, and we did it with complete abandon. We helped elect the first black president student body, Hattie Mae Williams. We were sent home from school along with my mother, who volunteered in the guidance office for wearing black armbands to protest the war in Vietnam. We were told to quit bringing the Great Speckled Bird, the underground newspaper, out of Atlanta to school. And finally, we had to go to the principal's office every Monday morning to make sure we were dressed appropriately and that our hair was not too long. Our history teacher said that anyone who missed school and protested the war in Vietnam should be hung from the flagpole. And that was my history class and Jane's history class. We were intimidated and threatened, but took solace in one another. We were tempered in fire, and we all became stronger because of it. We had mutual support that lasted for an entire lifetime. In Jane's obituary, it said that she never yelled. I really like that. But she was strong and never yielded her principles. To the English and Thomason family, and to all of you young people out here, you have some big shoes to fill. Thank you. Our next speaker is Jane's brother, Tim. Tim?
Thank you, Matt. It's going to be difficult to compress 55 years of life into just a few minutes. And I know that we're kind of short on time with the amount of speakers we've got today, so just bear with me. It's going to take me a few minutes to get through this. It's 2 minutes or 3 minutes is not nearly enough, but I wanted to share some of my life that I spent with Jane and the rest of our family, and maybe share a few of our moments. So, coming together, and I apologize for the notes, it's too much to remember and memorize here, but coming together to pay one's respects is typically a solemn occasion. But my family consists of mostly happy, good-natured, and humorous people. So we spend a lot of our time together doing our best to try and make each other laugh. So I hope that we can spend the next hour or so sharing fond memories of Jane and celebrating her life with joy and not sorrow. I'm glad to see you all here today. This is a really impressive crowd, and I knew there would be a lot. She'd be blown away by the size of this crowd. And to know that people came from great distances to help us celebrate her life would have really pleased her. And she probably would have told you to don't go to any trouble, because she was always so considerate and never really wanting to put anyone out. But all throughout Jane's ordeal, she was diligent about keeping us updated by text message or emails, and she was always very careful to choose the right words. She never wanted to alarm or upset anyone, and she carefully colored her messages with a rosy paintbrush. Jane always worried more about us than herself. And I know that Jane got this from her mom, Helen, who also possessed many of the same qualities. And anyone who knew either of them just simply loved them both. So when you think of all the superlatives to describe someone, Jane meant so many different things to so many people, and the list for each one of us would be probably quite lengthy. But several words immediately come to mind, and in no particular order, would be trusting, beautiful, elegant, brilliant, funny, creative, loving. In the end, the list would be endless. But regarding trust, some years ago we had two elderly aunts and an uncle who all lived together in Jacksonville. And all three were nearing the end of their lives and dealing with the associated health issues. Jane made frequent trips to go visit with them because she just loved them so much and wanted to be sure that they had everything that they needed. But on one occasion, Jane and I flew from Davis Island all the way to Jacksonville in a two-seat, 60-year-old airplane. And looking back, I know that took a great leap of faith on her part, but she believed in me and trusted that I would get us there and back safely. There were 7 kids in our family, and I'm the youngest. So it was me, Jane, and Bob, being the closest in age. And there's 6 years between me and Jane, and I'm pretty sure I was a surprise. But Bob is 2 years older than Jane, and he's always been pretty clever and was famous for setting booby traps around the house for anyone who wasn't paying attention. So unfortunately for Jane, this meant she was bookended by a couple of practical jokers. She wasn't always singled out, because anyone was fair game. But Jane was always a good sport and rarely retaliated. So by the time I came along, our older brothers and sisters were mostly grown and out of the house. And it was really just the 3 of us growing up. So I've come to realize that aside from our parents, though, that it was Jane and Bob who helped shape me into who I am today. And from early on, Jane was always the most influential female in my life. So as Pat alluded to a moment ago, Jane was definitely a child of the 60s, and she was greatly influenced by events of that decade. And for me, going into the 70s, I was exposed to a lot of different things from an early age. And naturally, Jane was tasked with keeping a close eye on me. I experienced many things, many interesting things as a preteen, and I grew up fast as a result. Jane included me at times, not because she had to, but you're all aware of guilt by association. Well, if I was included, I couldn't rat her out, could I? But it was also during this time that Jane showed me how to be gentle, kind, and compassionate. She also helped shape my musical taste by playing a lot of Neil Young, the band, Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young, and Santana, just to name a few. But oddly enough, she wasn't really into Merle Haggard or Waylon Jennings. Not sure why. So later, when I was a young teenager, I was 13, and I moved to Louisiana to live with my dad and Bob. And I learned to hunt and fish and do all sorts of other guy things. And Bob continued to educate me and further my career as a master practical joker. So a little bit later on, I was in my early 20s, and in the town of Cameron, Louisiana, where Bob lived with Pat Thunder, Jane, Bob, and I came together for a very magical week. And most of the finer details of that time escape me, and I'm not sure why we were all there, but we were. So we were having a great deal of fun, and on one particular afternoon, we were doing lots of nothing. But at that time, I think I was working on Bob's boat trailer, and Jane decided it might be a good time to go freshen up. So Bob's bathroom had a big clawfoot bathtub, but no shower. And Jane made the tragic mistake of leaving the bathroom door unlocked. You might wonder why that's important. So in South Louisiana, everyone knows that there's an abundance of seafood, and I think that we may have gone crabbing and fishing that morning. So I waited until Jane got settled into the bathtub really nice, and then I whipped the door open and threw a live blue crab into the tub. Well, I thought levitation was always just a magic trick, but I saw it for real that day. So Bob and I thought that was enormously funny, but not really dangerous since the crab claws had been removed. Well, not long after that afternoon, Bob was inspired as well. And so I'm working on the trailer, and Bob asked if I would like a beer. Well, hell yeah, I wanted a beer. That sounded great. So he brought the beer and had thoughtfully already opened it. But when I finally picked it up, I noticed it was unusually warm. So I'll let you decide what happened next, but it didn't dawn on me then. It didn't dawn on me then, but I think Jane might have given him the idea. So any of you have had the good fortune to be invited to any of her dinner parties knew that Jane was an excellent cook. She could serve a really elegant meal and make it look so effortless. She was also a consummate host, and she knew how to put just the right people together. Quite the little matchmaker at times. Everyone in our family turned out to be pretty good cooks, and even my recipe or pinch and dash didn't seem to matter much. And Jane knew her way around the kitchen, but she didn't really start out that way. As a young teenager, at times, she was in charge of making dinner for our family. We got stuff like chipped beef on toast, which wasn't bad, but the best was her almost made from scratch hamburger pizza from a Chef Boyardee kit. Bob described Jane's pizza perfectly as hamburger to ashes and crust to dust. But remember, this was before we had such thing as Pizza Hut. And for me, incidentally, for those of us from Lake Placid, the first pizza I ever had outside the house was at Jackson's on Lake June Road. So I know a lot of you know that place. Jane was very creative, artistic, and fashionable. And for as long as I remember, she was making her own clothing from Butterick or Simplicity patterns. Not sure why I remember that, but those of you that made clothes would know about it. And I remember how excited she was to go shopping downtown on a Saturday and go pick out a new pattern and a few yards of fabric and make a new dress or whatever. Culottes, for some reason. I don't even think they call it culottes anymore, but she had a great sense of fashion and a keen eye for design, and much of her artistic ability really blossomed as a teenager under the guidance of a beloved art teacher, Mr. Robert Saffold. She greatly admired this man, and I believe he was probably one of her favorite teachers of all time. Her creative talent was also evident in her ability to design beautiful interior spaces. Her way of balancing light and color, along with perfect placement of furnishings, was something that always impressed. She just had a knack for putting the right elements and the right amount of objects together to make a room feel just right. And I do have to say that she favored form over function. Her furniture always looked stylish, but wasn't always the most comfortable. This lazy boy was not part of her interior design vocabulary. But that was Jane, always true to herself, no matter how much it hurt us. Just like her mom, Jane was one of the most beautiful people inside and out to have ever walked the earth. And she was tolerant of so many things, especially her brother's shenanigans. But for the past year and a half, she tolerated the knowledge of almost certain death, including the pain and suffering that came with it. She was extremely brave and stoic. But for her entire life, three things she could absolutely never tolerate were racism, bigotry, or social injustice. She would be quick to smack down any offenders and came to the defense of anyone who was a target of discrimination and inequality. And for all these things, she was my hero. Every one of us here has a connection to Jane, whether family, friends, or business associates. And for the past several years, Jane had a business called Jane English Design. My wife, Kim, has a marketing and design business as well. Their businesses closely mirrored one another, but with enough individuality that they complemented each other beautifully. Kim and Jane collaborated on a number of projects over the years and spoke with one another on an almost daily basis. They shared ideas from a unique creative and design perspective that was complementary, and as a result, both of their businesses prospered. Like most of you, I didn't find it necessary to talk with Jane all the time. Sometimes weeks or even a month would pass without any contact between us. But that was okay, because if I really needed her, I knew that she was there. And if I wanted to know what was going on, all I had to do was ask Kim, because she had a connection every day. But they were great business partners and truly were sisters, not just in-laws. But the biggest point I wanted to make today is that all through my life, Jane was always there for me. She was at graduations, weddings, and births. She officiated at my marriage to Kim 25 years ago and was there when our daughter Ty was born 21 years ago. And from the time I was a young teenager She was always boosting my confidence and building my self-esteem. Whenever I had a new opportunity, or needed advice, or a place to stay, or just simply the unconditional love of a sister, she was there. And I'm the luckiest boy ever to have had her for a big sister. So it's the most bizarre thing to be up here and look over here and not see her sitting right beside Michael, Alex, Chris, and the rest of her family. And for that reason, that's why we're all here together. And I don't know what happens or where we go when we die, but I do know that even though Jane can no longer be there for me as before, she'll always be here. And because you came today, I know that Jane touched every one of your lives in some way, and I'll bet that at some point she was there for you too. Thanks for coming. She would have loved seeing you all.
Can't believe I have to follow my baby brother. I know. Okay, so we can do this. Delia Jane Thomason English was my little sister. She was the baby sister that Shirley and I used to dress up, and one day she would be our baby doll, and the next day she would be a beautiful bride, and then maybe she was Miss Kitty from the saloon at Bonanza. Actually, I think we used to dress Tim up too, but we're not going to talk about that today. She was the little sister. I used to kiss her scrapes and make it all better. I watched her grow into a beautiful, beautiful, accomplished woman. She always set goals. She knew what she wanted, and she went for it. She waited a long, 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 long time for Michael English to come into her life. And she knew great love and great happiness with him. And then Alex, I remember the day you were born. Alex came along, and he was a gift to her out of that union with Michael that was very rare and very special. And then Chris, her stepson, came along, and she felt that the circle was complete, and it gave her so, so, so much joy. You know, there's a natural order to life, and we don't expect our baby sister to go first. And as you can imagine, it's been a most challenging time for us. There are 4 women who have impacted my life in incredible ways, and I honor each of them today as I stand here. The first was my mother, Helen, my beautiful daughter, Jessica, and both of my sisters, my older sister, Shirley, and my baby sister, Jane. And if they had not been placed in my life in such a special way, I think I would have always, always searched for them as a friend in this life. And I'm so thankful for each one of them. We've gathered here today to simply take a moment to remember our lovely Jane and what she meant to each of us. And it would be impossible to sum up a life in just a few moments. I think we have just a minute or two. As I thought about it, I thought there's no way to do this in only a few words. She touched our lives in such magnificent and eloquent ways. And I know that each one of us here holds special memories of her. She was, as I knew her, she was fearless in life and fearless in death. She was undaunted by anything. She was a beloved wife, and Michael described her once as ebullient and sublime. And I think that's such a beautiful tribute that the heart of any wife would want to hear. She was a very loving mother and stepmother. She touched our lives in such profound and warm, loving, and insightful ways. I think of her as a force in the universe. Her course was well charted. As an adult, she never seemed to waver in an uncanny ability to approach life with grace, with strength, with wisdom, always with a bit of humor and great, great kindness. But she could also kick butt when necessary in a very, very nice way, of course. She was a Thomason girl. Jane knew the secret of life and that it was to be lived with as much joy as possible. In our last times together and in our just very precious times of talking, she would always say to me, "Mary, I have no regrets, no regrets." And I think that even when you find yourself in circumstance that you never planned for, you never invited, and you never wanted, she was so brave. At the diagnosis of terminal cancer, she faced it with courage and with strength and a demonstration of great, great love for those that she cared about and those that were close to her. To say an extraordinary life would be an understatement. Now that Jane is no longer limited by the confines of a mortal body that betrayed her, we can only imagine what she must be accomplishing now. She left every life that she touched so much better. With wonder and beauty and skillful simplicity, she touched our souls. And I can always feel her presence so close to me. Tolkien, in The Return of the King, made this statement: "The journey does not end here. Death is just another path, one that we all must take." And I think it's important to say today that as we grieve, there is no time limit on grieving. We've lost someone that we love and a piece of our hearts. And as our family and friends, we must allow ourselves the freedom to take all the time that we need to grieve. And I wanted to just close today with a short reading from the Planetary Pilgrim. And it says, I want you to listen. It says, "I am about to leave. My last breath does not say goodbye. For my love for you is truly timeless. Beyond the touch of death, I leave my thoughts, my laughter, and my dreams to you whom I have treasured beyond gold and beyond precious gems. I give to you what no thief can steal, the memories of our times together, the tender, love-filled moments, the successes we have shared, the hard times that brought us closer, and the roads that we have walked side by side. For each one of us here today, we are walking from earth into eternity with every moment that passes. And I know that my baby sister Jane left us with a legacy that I will treasure. I treasure my life here on earth with her. I treasure it. And I am so, so very thankful.
Thanks, Mary. Marlene Johnson is next.
What a joy and a privilege it is to be here. today to share Jane with all of you, whom she loved. My name is Marlene Johnson. In Shakespeare's The Tempest, the magician artist Prospero says, "We are such stuff as dreams are made of, and our little life is rounded with a sleep." Jane is my oldest friend. When I think of Jane, there's a kind of telescoping of time, as well as many shared archetypal journeys that move back and forth and in and out of my mind in a dreamlike fashion, including a dreamy, very heady coming of age as young girls in Lake Placid, Florida. I met Jane when we were 13 in 1966, right on the edge of this heady time that Pat so well spoke of earlier. She sat across from me in typing and in front of me in 8th grade math, where we would talk about boys that we had a crush on and the latest Beatles albums and what Beatles songs we liked. Nobody could rock a mini skirt like Jane Thomason. I still cannot hear the Beatles' Revolver, Sgt. Pepper's Hearts Club Band, or the White Album without thinking of Jane. And along with that, all of that dreamy coming-of-age time. We sat together in history and government classes where students watched in horror and awe as Pat Hamilton challenged, questioned, and probed for the truth behind the absolute authority of Ernie Francis's statements. Many thought these questions were annoying and time-consuming, but these questions, I really truly believe, began a process in me of asking questions, of questioning authority. Jane and I sort of went on this questioning authority journey, albeit in different ways, as we grew and individuated, finding our calling in the arts, Jane in the visual arts, and I in the theater arts. I remember her saying over and over to me, "Always keep your open mind, Johnson. Always keep your open mind." As we aged, I continued to value her friendship and her and Michael's hospitality in their home. She was so much fun, a great friend. You all know this. She slipped in and out of groups of people who were vastly different from her, but always with grace, warmth, and much good humor. "30+ years ago, Jane's mother, Helen, fought pancreatic cancer, while at the same time my own mother battled breast cancer. So Jane and I had a different bond, a bond of survivors. So it was ironic that within a few weeks of each other, we both were given a diagnosis of cancer, the same as our mothers. And here again is that time kind of telescoping in and out on itself, like who would have imagined 30 years later. In these last 16 months, we grew closer as we supported each other through adversity. She was a great listener, a source of comfort as I went through cancer treatment and as she was going through her own. She has taught me unforgettable lessons about how to meet death with grace. Looking back at your life well lived, it was hilarious that I received in the mail just a few months ago 3 wigs from Jane, one platinum white, one bright orange, like Bozo the Clown, orange red, and a third pink one that she insisted to Michael that I must have. These wigs. In an email of September 3rd, 2013, she wrote, "I have been a lucky girl with a wonderful hubby, kids, and such a conflict-free, harmonious adulthood. Who can be sad about that? I feel so ready in mind and spirit to deal with whatever comes, and I will just do my best." I remember talking on the phone with Jane for a long time in 1967. We were looking forward to the new Beatles album, which turned out to be Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. And later we were talking about the songs that we loved on it. We were talking about the space between us all, and the people who hide themselves behind a wall of illusion never glimpse the truth. Then it's far too late when they pass away. We were talking about all the love we could share when we find it, to try our best to hold it there with our love. With our love, we could save the world if they only knew. Try to realize it's all within yourself. No one else can make you change, and to see you're really only very small. And life flows on within you and without you. We were talking about the love that's grown so cold, and the people who gain the world and lose their soul. They don't know, they can't see. Are you one of them? When you've seen beyond yourself, then you may find peace of mind is waiting there. And the time will come when we're all one, and life flows on within you and without you. I had to do that for our hippie girl past. And just in conclusion, I wanted to say, at the end of Shakespeare's The Tempest, the bright artist spirit, Ariel, asks Prospero, "Was it well done?" To which Prospero replies, "Bravely, my diligence, thou shalt be free." Thank you.
My name is Barbara Stites. I'm Jane's friend. I've been a friend for a long time. I met Jane on a scorching hot afternoon in 1968 when I was 13 years old. I walked up in front of the Thomasons' house in Lake Placid at the top of the hill, and there she was, standing in the yard with her brother. I remember thinking that there was something special about this girl standing at the top of the hill. She wore a cotton blouse, cotton shorts, plus that sweet rosebud smile of hers. And even then, so long ago, she had those sparkly, happy, sassy eyes. And 2 years later, when I moved full-time to Lake Placid, we connected again, and we began a friendship that spanned nearly 50 years. When we were in high school, as you've already heard, Jane was the coolest, hippest, grooviest chick I had ever met. And I wanted to be so much like her. Who wouldn't? She was smart, insightful, kind, caring, honest and fearless, and you'll forgive the rhyme, kind of daring. Jane changed my life. She encouraged me to do things I thought were totally impossible. For example, she knew moving from Lake Placid to Tampa was a good idea for me, and she encouraged me. But without that encouragement and support, I would have never have moved here, never have made so many of you my Tampa friends. When I couldn't figure out how to do it, to move to Tampa, she said, just pack up and come. We'll take care of you. We'll help. And she and Michael did. I moved in next door, and we spent time together nearly every day for years after that. I got to watch Jane become a mom, and she was just incredible at it. She tirelessly loved and taught, trained, and tended Alex. We spent many hours of pool time at the Davis Island Yacht Club with you, all carefully protected with one adorable outfit after another. Your sense of style was incubated early. She was a great mom, and she was also a star library school grad student. I'm a librarian, and at some point in Jane's life, she decided she wanted to be one too, and she went to grad school. And she was a great student and a great librarian. In fact, just 2 days ago, I was in Portland, Oregon. In fact, I was there last night. But 2 days ago, I was at a conference in Portland, and I ran into a University of South Florida library school professor. And that professor said, man, was she some star student. She was fabulous. She's not forgotten. Jane was a serious student, an exemplary librarian, and a woman I admire greatly. To this day, whenever I pick out art, furniture, lamps, rugs, clothes, I think, WWJD. What would Jane do? What would she wear today? What color would she pick out? I won't ask you to raise your hands, but how many of you women thought, what would Jane wear? What color would she wear? You did, didn't you? All right, I bet you did. Jane was a woman of good character. She had a wickedly fun spirit, a talented design professional, and a very generous friend. She was a wonderful friend and a fabulous sister-in-law for many years. She has long been with me. She forever.
And next we have Tom McLaughlin.
Notes and crying rags. It's part of the process. So, Pat said, I'm Tom McLaughlin. A few years back, quite a few years back actually, I was one of Jane's university art professors. Professing to teach, what a dubious lifestyle. Because all one can truly do in that arena is facilitate a classroom or studio environment that encourages human wonderment. And what an unlimited supply Jane had in that area. It was a pleasure to watch Jane use her immense curiosity to reinvent and empower herself as a museum curator, almost, a librarian, and then creating her own graphic design business. During those pursuits, she also was enriching herself with love for Michael, Chris, and Alex. It was always a thrill to visit them and revel in the joy that was Jane's home. Oh, Jane, Delia Jane. How many changing colors can a room have? And what sky are you painting now? Long before eHarmony and Hello Cupid, There was Jane and Michael's Fix 'em Up. It's not a .com. All it was a telephone and a porch. And there's probably many couples in this room who stood next to the molding and the archway between the kitchen and the dining room in the house on Fremont, where Jane gleefully recorded height, but also matches made. Where most people recorded growth of children, Jane also recorded the growth of her friend's life. The last time I was in this room, was in the fall of the year 2000 for the celebration of the life of Jan Abel, who was my partner and companion at that time, and also a match made by the Jan and Michael Fix 'em Up blind date service. Oh, damn, Pat, I'm sorry. Didn't turn this thing off. Yeah, Jan? Yeah, we're hanging out in this building that you restored. It's got some leaks in the ceiling now, though, but you know, it's aging well. Jane's there? Wow. So you're taking care of her now, huh? That's great. You tell her we'll miss her too. Yeah, we always think about her. Sorry for that. Meant to turn it off. Architecture and molding and the Fix 'em Up blind dating service. It all doesn't end there for me. I've been lucky enough to be recorded on that molding twice. For it's Jane and Michael's Fix 'em Up dating service who introduced me to my wife of 13 years, Dee Seymour. So thank you. Thank you, Jane. Can never thank you enough for your curiosity, Jane. Big hugs to you, and please keep on painting those sunrises for us all. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Now we have Julia Anderson.
I'm pretty sure Jane knew how I felt about her. But in case anything was left unsaid, I decided to write a letter, so she would hear it today. Dear Jane, when I first met you, almost 14 years ago, as I began working with the library, I had no idea at the time what an incredible impact you would have on my life. The library job was my first real job after college, and you were my supervisor, my mentor, and you took me under your wing. You provided guidance, encouragement, a creative and artistic approach, and an open-minded outlook on life. You were a good listener, you made me feel important and valued. You were always positive, patient, and honest. You were strong, and while not the loudest person, you spoke your mind. Liz Bollinger, our library colleague and close friend, and I talked about how you had a presence about you. We knew when you were there. We knew we could count on you. We could count on you for advice, constructive criticism, and to pitch in and help. No matter how big, small, or menial the task, you never had the attitude that you were above anything. You were not just there to help, but happy to help. You were the epitome of a superb work ethic. You were driven, focused, dedicated, and a problem solver. You also knew how to laugh at things and not get too worked up about anything. There was a calmness about you that made me believe everything would be okay. The mentoring you provided instilled confidence, strength, and out-of-the-box thinking. I know that I'm not the only one you did this for. You were a guiding figure for so many. You came to my wedding, as well as my wedding and baby showers, all important events in my life, not by chance, but because you had become so important to me. After almost 4 years of working together, you were not just my mentor, but I considered you my good friend. But what I will remember and treasure the most about you and our relationship is the car rides, and all the conversations and laughs we had during those car rides. When we worked at the library downtown, parking was an issue. It was your idea that we carpool since we both lived in Hyde Park. When I first learned of your diagnosis, the memories of all our car rides came flooding back to me. Even though the car rides were not long, about 15 minutes each way, I so enjoyed them. We shared so many stories. We brainstormed about work projects, vented about our day, and laughed a lot. If we were ever commiserating, by the time we returned to your house, we were laughing about whatever it was. I confided in you with personal issues. I trusted you. I especially loved picking you up on Monday mornings to hear about what you did over the weekend. Whether it be an event you and Michael attended or a gathering you hosted at your house, I loved hearing about all the details, from the decor to the food and drinks that were served. Or maybe it was a home project you had just completed, a new paint color in a room, or the rearranging or repurposing of furniture. I had the privilege of knowing your amazing family. You told me so many beautiful stories about your childhood, about being a wife and a mother. You shared your personal life lessons and wisdom with me. Some I did not fully appreciate until I had a family of my own. I have cataloged all of those conversations and experiences, and I still reference them in my mind. Even though we were not as involved in each other's day-to-day lives after we both left the library, you and your approach have always been in the back of my mind, in work situations and in my personal life. And now, I have a family and 2 small girls of my own. And the way you lived your life and the way you took care of your family made such an impression on me. You are still mentoring me, and I know that you always will. I feel so fortunate to have you come into my life when I was young and embarking on my journey into the real world. You are no longer physically here with us, but your presence still is. And I'm eternally grateful for all that you taught me and for your love and friendship.
I am honored to be up here to talk about Jane. She was an amazing woman and one of my favorite people in this world. I am proud to have had her in my life and to be in hers for nearly 10 years. I know some of you know me and how we were acquainted, but for those of you who don't, I worked with her on several projects over the last 10 years. Our careers were seemingly in different worlds, but what she brought to every task so perfectly meshed with my world that you'd never know it. Jane was always available when I needed her, whether I needed her help on a task or I needed an idea, or even just some instructions on how to do something in InDesign that I just couldn't figure out. She taught me so much. I truly don't believe I would be where I am today, professionally or personally, if Jane had not been in my life and if I had not had her guidance. We were assigned some tough tasks through the years, and no matter how difficult or seemingly impossible even, she had this knack for taking my vague ideas that didn't mean anything and give me exactly what I needed. She regularly turned my gibberish into art. She taught me patience, responsiveness, and how to take a crazy idea and make it reality. She didn't shy away from difficult situations or difficult tasks. She met them head on, and always with a smile. She never hesitated to help and give me constructive feedback when I wasn't on target. Jane always made time for me no matter how busy she was. and she always did everything at 100%. I will be forever grateful to have known Jane and for her to care about me, to teach me and to mentor me, because I cared for her deeply. She was always a beautiful light to everyone around her, and she will continue to live in our hearts.
Next, we have Paul Trusick.
Even though my time with Jane may not have been as long with experience as everyone else, I had the pleasure of meeting the Alex family when moving to Ybor in 2009. It wasn't long before they made me feel like family, inviting me into their home for dinners and holiday events. Luckily, Jane and I shared a freelance design background and both had the opportunity to collaborate together on a few different projects. Not only did Jane have an admirable design aesthetic and detailed quality reflected in her work, I thoroughly enjoyed her sense of humor, sharing anecdotal stories about her experience working in the library environment, as I had a short stint doing as well. She helped me navigate the language of librarians, their quirky behavior, and helped me along that whole process. It was nice having someone who understood the pressures and challenges of juggling multiple projects while trying to maintain some sort of work-life balance, giving half of yourself to your work while salvaging what was left for other goals, dreams, and passions for life. No matter how much stress or complications came along with any given project, Jane was able to tackle them with wit, vigor, and enthusiasm. Even when the heat was on, and there were a few choice expletives that crossed her lips, she always had the best comedic delivery of those few words, and always made me giggle. She always did so with such a quaint, delicate, sometimes sarcastic, good nature, and I loved every minute of it. Jane taught me that work will always be there. Sometimes it's best to step away from projects when you're out of steam and need to recharge, spending quality time with family, friends, not always beating yourself up over not having an immediate answer to everything. You could sense Jane's astute attention to detail and jovial spirit in everything she did. Not only the work she produced, but everything she touched. I was always excited to stop by the Englishes, to try to spot any new subtle changes in design layout, fresh coat of paint that can constantly transform their living space. She basically turned what would normally be a static living space into an inspirational, living, breathing piece of art. Jane carried with her a special light, or aura. No matter how frazzled or stressed I ever felt, it always melted away within seconds of being in her presence. The apple doesn't far fall from the tree, and her son Alex embodies the same quality and light as his mother. So I know a part of her will always be with us. Thank you.
Now we've got Ed Miller.
I'm very honored to be here. Many people have spoken about Jane as a librarian. I personally think that librarians are very serious people, part of a special cult. People who can bring you into a place where books and information are found and who can make you sit down, be quiet, and pay attention. It's powerful. I've known Jane and Michael for a long time. And soon after they became a couple, I had cause to go to the downtown library where I met Jane in her professional capacity, though I knew her socially before. It was a research project I was working on using the Berger brother photographs, some of which are outside here at the Friday Morning Music Hall, the historic photographs that can be seen on the walls here. And I needed to be able to do a research project to pull the information. Jane and I worked closely together for about an hour and a half there at the John Germany Library. where you walk in past the homeless people sitting on the couches and go upstairs to the place where the Burger Brothers archives were once held. And you could go through them by hand, and we did. It gave me an impression of her energy, her intelligence, and the importance of this resource. I got an impression for her as a professional person for the first time, one that I held for the rest of my life. And so it's sort of Jane the worker that I was thinking about when I was thinking about Jane. Rather than share more of my own words, I'll use someone else's. I like this poem. It's by Marge Percy. Marge Percy, an American poet. She's contemporary. It's called To Be of Use, and it makes me think of Jane. The people I love best jump into work head first, without dallying in the shallows, swim off with sure strokes, almost out of sight. They seem to become natives in that element, the black, sleek heads of seals bouncing like half-submerged balls. I love people who harness themselves, an ox to a heavy cart, who pull like water buffalo with massive patience, who strain in the mud and muck to move things forward, who do what has to be done again and again. I want to be with people who submerge in the task, who go into the fields to harvest and work in a row and pass the bags along, who are not parlor generals and field deserters, but move in a common rhythm when the food must come in or the fire be put out. The work of the world is common as mud. Botched, it smears the hands and crumbles to dust. But the thing worth doing well done has a shape that satisfies, clean and evident, Greek amphoras for wine or oil. Hopi vases that held corn are put in museums, but you know they once were made to be used. The pitcher cries for water to carry, and a person for work that is real. Other than the indelicacy of speaking about water buffaloes, I think Greek amphora and Hopi vases probably serve as an apt metaphor for Jane, her work, and what she meant to all of us. Function, form, beauty, work as art. Thank you.
Now we have Rainey Kushner.
Alexander English was born February 22nd, 1987. And I wrote a letter to him when he was a couple weeks old, and I want to share that with you. Dear Alexander, hi little person, this is me, Rainey. I've known you since way back, before you were born. I watched you fill your mom's belly month by month until she became full of you, making you an obvious and constant reminder that you were a part of all of our lives, even before we saw you. We thought about you a lot, wondered how you would look, who you would look like, and what your name would be. Your mom and dad asked me if I would be with them during their labor and birth. I was so pleased to be asked, and I said, of course. Well, I think it was on a Friday that your mom called to say she was having some contractions, little rushes that prefaced the real thing. And for 2 days, she and your dad were lying around, nurturing themselves, your mom resting, eating nutritious foods, and generally getting ready for your arrival. I remember the weather, cloudy, cool, the kind of day that one wants to stay home. Your mom checked in with me a few times. I too was getting primed for you. On Saturday night, my husband Gil and I were home and got a call saying, it feels like this maybe it's soon, we'll call you. So we went to bed thinking any time the phone will ring. At 5:30 Sunday a.m., it rang. I was so excited, I went off into the dark, quiet streets to Tampa General Hospital, and so happy to be about to be seeing you. I went up to the labor room, and there were your folks, Mom looking great, Dad too, full of the promise of your arrival. Soon Seal, your midwife, came and Mom and Dad settled down to working towards your birth. Let me describe the setting. The labor delivery recovery room was big. A labor delivery bed for Mom, a nice recliner for Dad. There was a bathroom, TV, lots of countertops on which your dad quickly spread the following: lollipops, sour balls, fruit, cookies, audio tapes, books, a fan, a robe, slippers, and various other things. The morning was quiet inside and out. A deep fog covered all the buildings and trees, and it looked so special outside. The early hours of labor were special. Your mom breathed each contraction with deep concentration and harmony with her body. As she breathed and became one with the rhythms of the uterus working towards your birth. What did you feel? That's something babies can't tell us and bigger people can't remember. I remember how we turned out the lights in the room and opened the drapes and watched the fog lift and the lights come. It was peaceful, mainly with your mom breathing and blending with the wonderful rhythm of labor. And your dad also blending with your mom's work, breathing with her, focusing on her totally, in rhythm with her breathing, standing and letting her lean on him, reading her needs, doing the best things for her throughout. I remember feeling like I really wanted to nurture your dad so he could continue to have energy to keep up with what he was doing. So I got food for him, encouraged him to take little breaks, fanned your mom while he focused on breathing with her. Labor went well, and Seal predicted your birth by around noon, and then things slowed down as it became evident that it would take a while to push you out. So your mom began to push and rest and push and rest and push and rest, and it went on for about 3 hours. I remember getting really tired and at one time could hardly keep my eyes open, but I felt so guilty that I was so sleepy while your mom kept pushing, pushing, pushing. And your dad, with every push, would lift your mom up into her cool, curled birth position and hold her and direct her to breathe and push. They worked hard. And then Seal said, "Okay, it's time." Lots of people came into the room. The quiet atmosphere changed to a very busy one. Your mom pushed your head down. Seal was right there, and your head moved down and out, and your body followed, and there you were, a boy, Alexander. A beautiful 9-pound plus beautiful baby. We laughed and cried and felt so happy, all of us. I'll never forget that moment. The pediatrician was there checking you out, taking care of you. Soon you were bundled up and brought to your mom, who put you on her warm body and gave you a breast. And you nuzzled and took your first outside meal. After a little while, you were taken to the newborn nursery. I went out to call Gil, and soon he came in with bagels and cream cheese and sparkling apple cider. He came right into the room where you were born. We ate and hugged and smiled a lot and felt wonderful. Gil and I then left the folks to be together and to eat their gourmet meal. Your mom was starved. And we went under the guise of grandparents to the nursery so that Gil could see you. We saw you again later that week when you were home with your folks and your brother. Everyone was so happy, and you so sweet and so loved. What a special and wonderful thing for me to be part of your birth. I'll never forget it.
And with that introduction, we have Alexander.
Thank you, Randy. That was lovely. It's been so great to hear these stories in the time leading up to today and today, in the residual stages from Jane's passing. I've learned so much about what a monumental human being she was. But to me, she was just mom. I never knew that other kids had mothers who did not accept them as gay. Or mothers who used guilt as a tool for control. I didn't understand how other families had so much drama. I also thought it was normal to rearrange the furniture and repaint every season. At each point along the way, at every point along the way, in all my stages of eccentricity of growth and discovery, all I got from her was love and acceptance. Home and her kitchen and bed were my safe places. Of course, there were always the lectures about wearing sunscreen, writing thank you notes, and the advice to get started on a project or paper early instead of procrastinating. She was a proactive mom, and she preempted me to be a better person. Now that she's gone, I have been approaching life with the question, what would Jane do? It's almost as if she's a greater daily influence on decisions as a memory, as a spirit, than when she was alive, and I took her for granted. I'm so grateful to have shared with all of you, and to know that she has had as much an impact on you as she has had on me. Though I have had a fuller picture of life by witnessing her death and its ripple effects, I prefer to remember her how she would probably want me to remember her, just as mom. Thank you.
Jane attracted wonderful people, and
she made me a very happy man and a better man. I want to thank the speakers who are all doing it. They were speakers for the dead, and I was hoping that they would be as wonderful as they were. I knew they would, and they were. I think that they were able to tell you a lot about me, and Tim and Mary and Rainey and all of you. I want to thank you very much. And this has been hard for Alex and hard for me, and I wake up in the morning and she's not there. And she's not there at night. But you know, we had a great life, and she did die with as much grace and humor and calmness as she lived. She didn't yell, but she laughed a lot, and she took care of a lot of people. She loved all of you as well. So I'm on my oldest friend now, William Harris, to play Ode to Joy, Beethoven's Ode to Joy on the violin. And then I'd like you all to join all of us in the lobby for a little bit of a party. Thank you very much.
This is darn difficult, right? Only because I'm already musical. There's so many people here. Those of you in the front row, turn around. This is standing room only. This family is love, and we love you.